45 minutes total was like, because I recorded that intro video that's 8 freaking minutes, and then I spent a little over 37 minutes talking about freaking Luffy and his abilities, and also explaining different powers in the One Piece world related to Devil Fruits. 45 minutes total. 15 minutes short of an hour. We don't need to go that long. But anyway, we're going to continue on. Like I said, the first 4 videos of this are going to be talking about the 4 characters here in Jump Force that actually have Devil Fruit abilities. You're going to be last because you have 2. And I'm going to have to explain you. So, Sabo will be next. But I want to talk about Boa Hancock. Now, Boa Hancock is known as the Pirate Empress. She's one of the warlords, which are very powerful pirates that are allied with the world government. Basically, the world government kind of like uses them as agents. Like, okay, we'll forget the fact that you guys are pirates if you work for us. She's one of them. I think she's pretty close to just like renouncing that whole thing because she's so in love with Luffy. The reason why she's so in love with Luffy actually has to do with a combination of her past and her powers. And we'll get into her past just a little bit. She used to be a slave. She was a slave to the world nobles, which basically in the past there was just a huge craziness that happened, and it's so crazy that the world government in One Piece does not want people to talk about it, and I'll get into more about this when I talk about Nico Robin, who's a member of Luffy's crew, but because she's one of the only people that can decipher these ancient stone tablets called the poneglyphs that talk about the ancient history. But basically, once the dust had settled on this huge chaos that happened back then, which I believe was called the Void Century, once the dust had settled on that, 12 families came together to establish the new world government as the earliest version of it, and set the world on the path that it is in now. Years and years later, generations later, the descendants of those 12. Where's Luffy? He's right next to you. Anyway, like literally, if you were to marry Luffy, your husband would be to your left, your surrogate brother-in-law would be to your right. Anyway, so the world nobles, they are the descendants of those original 12 families, and because their ancestors changed, like made the world what it is, they basically walk around with their heads so far up their own asses that it's ridiculous. They basically, like, one of the main goals of the world government is to basically make the freaking world basically worship the world nobles, or Tenryubito as they're known in the Japanese version, like gods among men. I mean, they have their own freaking, like, huge-ass mansion that contains most of the Tenryubito. Like, I think it's, like, all but, like, 2 families live in this place. There's theories that there's incest going on because they can't pollute the bloodline with, you know, commoner blood, although the Tenryubito can just walk up and take a freaking bride of, like, any pretty woman that strikes their fancy that they happen to see on the street. They can do it, but there is some theories that there might be incest. There might have been incest leading up to the current Tenryubito, just because their heads are so far up their own asses. And but Boa Hancock was basically a slave, and considering that she is considered one of the most beautiful women in the One Piece world, she was a slave. And I mean, look at her. It might not be the case, but it's heavily implied that the kind of slave she was basically a love slave. Okay, that's what she was. Not a slave to love, but I'm trying to put it politely. We all know what I'm getting at. She's a sex slave. All right, that's basically what she was. Her and her sisters were sex slaves. They eventually broke free, but I believe it was when they were actually slaves of the Tenryubito, they were force-fed their devil fruits. Now, her sisters both got snake fruits. Snake, model this and model that. We don't see a whole lot of them in the story. So I'm not really going to talk about them, but they have snake fruits, where Boa was fed the Mero Mero no Mi, or the Love fruit. Once again, dear, your pseudo-husband is there on your left, behind you. Just turn your head to the left, you'll see him. But anyway, she was fed the Mero Mero no Mi, the Love fruit, and you have to understand, she is like two references to ancient Greece. One, her and her whole tribe are all women that I believe were abused. That definitely her and her sisters were, and I think they created a haven for women that, like, they want to break free, like if they've been abused and stuff like that. They want to live free from men. They created this place called Amazon Lily. With a name like Amazon Lily, it doesn't take much to figure out that, yes, this is a whole island that is all about the ladies, so it's definitely tying back to the Amazons, which, you probably heard a lot about if you read DC Comics, and especially pay attention to Wonder Woman. That was the idea of the Amazons. They were a whole tribe of nothing but women. They were all strong warriors. And definitely when you see Amazon Lily, they are definitely some warrior women there. There might be some more girly girl characters there, but for the most part, they are very warrior women, and they are prepared to fight and protect themselves if, like, any man would dare, come to their place. But on top of being, like, okay, if you think about Greek mythology with the Amazons, I believe, like, this is not made up for the comics. I do believe the Queen of the Amazons in ancient Greek mythology was actually called Queen Hippolyta. Well, in One Piece's world, not only is she a member of the Warlords, and I think she's a member of the Warlords just to kind of protect Amazon Lily, but Boa is also like the queen of Amazon Lily, so she is basically the Queen Hippolyta for Amazon Lily. But getting into the nature of her powers, her powers are basically more akin, like, this is why she wears, like, snake earrings and whatnot. Her powers are more akin to another Greek legend, which is the Medusa. Basically, what the Mero Mero no Mi, or the Love fruit, allows a person to do is anyone that looks upon the user with impure thoughts will be turned to stone. That's why if you look at her, she has those snake earrings. And, I mean, just look at her, alright? Even battle damage, she looks amazing. And she, so it's not very hard to have impure thoughts. Like, with men, it would definitely be more lustful thoughts. With women, it could be more jealousy. Now, I don't know if it's like just an automatic. I can't remember if it's like an automatic thing, like if you just look at her and you think impure thoughts, you automatically turn to stone. I do know she can inflict the stone status on you. Now, and she does this in a couple of different ways, and they all play into the techniques that she uses in this story. Now, or in this game. Now, here's the thing. She can use her stone powers on objects, and just turn them to stone, and then she can just break them easily. So, like, okay, an object obviously can't have a lustful, thought of her, or an impure thought of her. But, like, that's just how her power works. I guess you could argue that the love fruit is the stone fruit, because it turns things to stone. But when we're talking about living beings, particularly people, she can use her long-range technique is the pistol kiss, where her fruit lets her generate this kind of pink energy, and she normally shapes it into the shape of a heart. And pistol kiss is her long range, where she forms a heart and then she shoots it like a bullet at her opponent. And I think if it hits you, like, whatever part of the body it hits, like, will be at least temporarily turned to stone. So that's why it's kind of knocking people down. It's hitting with the force of like a bullet, as well as probably partially turning people to stone temporarily. Then there is her slave arrow, which is exactly this. She summons up a very large heart of pink energy, and then shoots multiple pink arrows that whatever they hit will be turned to stone. Now, you would have to be hit with multiple slave arrows to have your whole body turn to stone. But that's basically her rapid fire technique. Like with her pseudo husband here, Luffy, he has the Gum Gum Gatling, which, okay, we'll see if we can fire it off here real quick. All right, come on, let me hit it. I really want to show this off. Zoro, stand still for a second. There we go. Okay, see, there you go. There's Gum Gum Hawk Gatling. Alright, that's Luffy. Like, Gum Gum Gatling in any of its forms is Luffy's rapid fire technique. Slave Arrow is basically that for Boa. And Boa could use this power, like, okay, let's say you shoot a bunch of cannonballs in her general direction. She could use Slave Arrow to turn all the cannonballs, which are probably made of iron, into like brittle stone that she can then easily break by maybe like firing a few more slave arrows. So that's how her ability works. Then her main technique is right there, the Marrow Beam, where basically she fires pink energy hearts in a wave, and once again, anyone that has impure thoughts about her, whether it be jealousy or love or hatred or whatever, it will be turned to stone. Now, one of the reasons why she's so infatuated with Luffy is, Luffy's a great guy. I mean, he'd be the kind of dude that would be a really cool dude to hang out with. He's wild, he's wacky, but he has a deep sense of honor and respect towards people, and he holds his friends in the highest regard. His friends are his family. It's like, if you become friends with Luffy, you're automatically just considered an extension of his family, and if you need him, he will be there fighting tooth and nail, risking life and limb to help you out no matter what the situation is. He'll come running if you need him. So, like, okay, it's easy to see why you could like him. But, like, one of the reasons why she falls so head over heels in love with him is she's so used to being told how pretty she is and being lusted after. I mean, she was a sex slave, for God's sakes, at one point. She's so used to this that, like, She kind of has a shit personality, but most people. But considering her past, you know, it's easy to understand why. But like she constantly says like, oh, she can be allowed to get away with just about anything just because she's beautiful. You know, she could walk around and just kick people in the freaking head all day if she wanted to, and like she'll get away with it because, you know, just because she's beautiful. But then Luffy literally crash lands into Amazon Lily, and Boa tries to use her love beam on Luffy. Now Luffy is actually like, Luffy has no interest in her just for her attractiveness. Like I'm sure he can appreciate how pretty she is, but he has no interest in her just for her looks. So when he's like, he doesn't even pay any attention how beautiful and, you know, sexy she actually is. So when she does that, the Marrow beam on him, it has no effect. And she's like, huh? Like, what? No effect at all? And so she becomes kind of infatuated with Luffy if she's like, holy shit, here's a guy that, like, he's not, you know, all goo eyes over me. My Marrow powers have no effect on him because, you know, he has no impure thoughts about me. You know, he has no lust or jealousy or anything for me. Like, holy crap, this dude's really interesting. And, like, the more interested she became in him, basically the more in love with him she became. Really, I think with all the crazy stuff that Luffy goes through in the story, I think when it's all said and done, I think Luffy should marry Hancock. I mean, he's gonna be king of the pirates. That's his dream. He wants to be king of the pirates. But, like, seriously, think about it. She's already called the Pirate Empress. She's a gorgeous woman. She can handle herself. But, like, if anybody would deserve to marry a Pirate Empress, it would be the king of the freaking pirates. Now, I know some people say, oh, Luffy should end up with his navigator, Nami, or with Nico Robin, who's his archaeologist. You know, and they're both beautiful women in their own rights, and I could definitely see it happening. But, like, it just kind of makes sense. If she's the Pirate Empress, he's the future king of the pirates. I think it just makes a lot of sense, really. Like, and if anybody would deserve a gorgeous thing like that, you know, boobs as big as her head, you know, fantastic hips and legs for days, it would definitely be, like, you know, main hero Luffy there. But her, let's get into her final ability, which was with the finishing maneuver I just did, which was called, it's called Perfume Femur. And it's where Boa takes advantage of the fact that she's got legs for days. She got legs for days. Like, not only are her legs very sexy to look at, but they're also very strong. She's her primary hand-to-hand fighting style is mostly kick-based. And her Marrow powers can actually be used through touch. She primarily uses them at range, you know, firing Pistol Kiss or Slave Arrow or, you know, Marrow Beam. But, once again, there, he's to your left. Just turn your head slightly. You'll see him. You can probably see him in your peripheral vision. But she fights, like, as you can see here, not a whole lot of punches coming out. It's mostly kicks. But her Perfume Femur is like one of her most devastating attacks, because it's something that, like, okay, if she fires Pistol Kiss, you know, like, okay, she can knock somebody down with it. Probably would have to fire multiple Pistol Kisses and probably multiple Slave Arrows to completely turn a person to stone. But as strong as she is and as fast as she can throw out these wicked strong kicks, this is a technique that she could easily use to completely overwhelm a person, and it still has the Marrow effect on it. So she's kicking the crap out of people, and wherever she's kicking them, wherever her kick lands, still has the Marrow stone effect. So she could kick you in the side of the head, and the side of your head would turn to stone. And if she just, like, you know, kicked you repeatedly in the same spot, or in, like, close to the same spot, she can easily just turn, you know, that particular area, that particular part of your body into a very brittle stone that she can then easily just break with the sheer force of her kicks. So just from the combination of her powers and the power of her kicks, she could literally just turn your head to brittle stone and then bust your head open. And she could easily do this in a few kicks. So while her love beam could turn you into solid stone entirely, you know, you've gotta get exposed to that beam. You know, if you can get away from her, you'd be okay. Or if you don't, or if you're like Luffy and you have no impure thoughts, you're just very pure-hearted, or in Luffy's case, maybe a little pure-hearted and a bit ditzy character, then you'll be immune to it. Or like if you already have, you know, a love of your life and you're totally devoted to them to the point where you don't, you know, you don't have eyes for any other woman or any other man in a lady's case, or you know, like, well, whoever your significant other is, I don't judge, but like, if you have no impure thoughts towards her, her power will not work on you. Now, she can still kick the shit out of you, but you know, her power will not work on you because you don't have any impure thoughts. But if you can also get away from her, like, her powers don't have unlimited range. So if you can get away from her, it won't work. But if you do have impure thoughts, she can just kick you. And she can, like, kick you all over the place and turn your whole body into stone. Or she can just kick you repeatedly in one spot. And, like, you know, like, let's say she kicks you repeatedly in your left temple, right? Like, the whole left side of your head could turn to stone. And then she could just, like, hit you one last time in the side of the head with a really strong kick with her legs for days. And she could bust the side of your head open, and I don't need to explain how bad that would be. You know, or like, say she repeatedly kicks you in the chest, right? She could then bust your chest open. You know, just all this stuff that her powers can do. If she completely turns you to stone with either her Marrow beam or her, you know, just kicking you all over the place, then she can just, like, basically push you over and you break. Her power is scary if you think about it. Like, it's very well deserving of the fact that, you know, she's named after a snake, Boa, and she also has a Medusa thing going on. And damn it, Luffy, you need to get a piece of this action. Okay. Let's move on to Sabo before I start ranting about Luffy being dumb for not wanting a piece of this.